Hey guys, how are you? The Michael movie is about a month away. Can you believe it? We've been waiting for it, and it's finally almost here. I saw something funny. I think it might have been my buddy Chris in the UK who put something funny on social media about if they do a soundtrack for the Michael movie, which, well, they're going to. We're going to talk about it just a little bit. And then if they do a soundtrack for the next one, and they call them all Michael because there's already a Michael album. Potentially, there could be 3 Michael albums to just completely confuse the public and show an utter minor lack of creativity on somebody's part. But hey, life goes on. We're going to be talking about the track list on the Michael movie coming out, and a couple other little topics I just want to touch on. So I've got my ginger tea. Go make yourself something to drink, and I hope you consider joining me, hanging out with me for just a little bit here in the studio, and we're going to have a chat. We're already well into the third week in March. The year is flying by, and the Michael movie is just a few weeks away. I'm excited. I think it's going to be fun. I think the director is taking it very seriously. The clips that I've seen with Jafar, I think, are fantastic. So just for fun, I thought I'd go through the track list of the soundtrack. And some of these songs, I actually have maybe a quick story or two. Some of them, I was too young, so I have no connection to them at all, other than just, being like you and listening to them on the radio. I thought it might be kind of fun just to go through the track list song by song and see if you think that it's a good solid list, or if they left something out, or where are we going here? So the first song on the soundtrack, at least on Wikipedia, is I'll Be There by the Jackson 5, released August of 1970. I would have been a whopping 6 years old at that point. Probably did not have a boombox or a big listening system, but I probably heard it, that year, maybe a couple years later, different places where you hear music. So obviously I have no connection to that song, but it's a classic Jackson 5 song. And of course, Mariah Carey went on and did her version. It's been re-recorded many, many times. Absolutely beautiful song. Let's move on. Let's Never Can Say Goodbye, Jackson 5. I grew up in the disco era. So now, of course, the Jackson version of it's their song. But I kind of grew up on the Gloria Gaynor version, which is that's a banger of a song. And, but J5 did it too. Not going to take anything away from him. So this is the soundtrack. This is kind of where we're going to be going with Michael in the Michael movie. Then you've got Who's Lovin' You? My goodness, what an absolute classic. Little tiny kid with that enormous voice, just attacking that song like a pro. I've heard numerous producers, talk about just how jaw-dropping. Imagine being Berry Gordy back then, and hearing this little kid with this emotion and just this crazy vocal range, singing it like a 36-year-old man. So, in a way, that's almost when Michael, in my opinion, probably started coming of age a bit. And I'm sure his brothers were like, "Oh man, let's ride this train as long as we can." And I say that with respect. I'm not dissing on anybody, but if you're around that much talent, that had to have just lit a fire under everybody. Then the medley, I Want You Back, ABC, The Love You Save. When I hear some of those songs, I'm immediately taken back to the Bad Tour, 1988. I went to several of the stops on the Bad Tour in New York and LA. And it was so funny because when the medley would come on, let's do the old songs the old way. And Michael's doing the old J5 dances or Jackson dances, and the choreographers would come out and do it with them. I'm going to be honest, it wasn't my favorite part of the show. And if I'm being really honest, it was a great time to run backstage into the Pepsi tent and and grab a Pepsi. And don't hate me. I do love some of the old songs. I get a little more excited about the things, when he really became a solo artist. And when I started working with him. So I hate to say it, but when I hear the medley, the first thing that comes to my mind is Pepsi, which I'm sorry, that's just me. Ben, Maddie and I were working on some stuff for my events in Paris a few days ago, and I'll tell you about Paris after I get through the list. But we wound up watching just a little clip from the movie Ben, where Michael is singing to a rat. And again, I mean, it's a beautiful performance. Probably not my favorite MJ song, but great performance. Obviously it's going to be represented in the movie. And again, you can kind of see Michael charting his own course. So Ben, yeah, probably it makes sense that it's on the soundtrack. Then, boom, big leap forward to Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. Now we're entering into the big leagues, obviously a Rod Temperton song. And it's so funny when I hear Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. When we were working on the Dangerous album, we were calling it the Decade album. Bruce Swedien was obviously engineered the original Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, and then he was, the captain of the ship on the Decade Dangerous album. And we were compiling all of the best of, the Decade album was supposed to be, 8 or 9 best of songs, and then it was going to be 4 or 5 new songs, something like that. And Bruce, he would tell this story all the time. When they recorded Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, Bruce couldn't understand the lyrics, or we always had fun with the lyrics in the control room. Nothing tawdry or anything like that. But, some of Michael's lyrics, his enunciation is beautiful, but there's still some lyrics that are kind of hard to decipher the first time you hear them. And for whatever reason, Bruce always called this song like Don't Stop at the Postman or Don't Stop at the Post Office or something. He always had post office tied in with Don't Stop. And then, of course, you've got, Michael playing the percussion, playing the bottles. That, again, this is before my time. I was going to be meeting Michael very soon after this. But, those iconic Michael playing the bottles and Bruce recording those bottles with his beautiful, I think they were the RCA 77 microphones. And we talked about that a lot, that percussion would come up from time to time. Michael loved percussion and making percussion. I mean, tapping a pencil, tapping anything, beatboxing. And it always seemed like we were going to do more, have him record certain things through the years. But obviously the vocals were the main thing. But we didn't really have Michael do a lot of, real actual acoustic percussion. I mean, we had Paulinho da Costa, so really almost anything we needed, Paulinho could do a magnificent job. But Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, that's Michael playing the bottles. Next one, you've got Beat It. Depending on your age, you may or may not remember the early days of MTV when Beat It just landed. MTV was the Wild West. And I think I was in high school or maybe just graduating high school. And everybody was just addicted to MTV. And the funny thing is, it was loaded with just some of the lamest videos you can imagine. They were getting better, and Michael raised the bar so much. But back then, MTV, I'm just going to be blunt, was very white and very British. We loved British bands and rock and roll. And that's just, back then, not punk rock, but new wave was kind of coming in, and but MTV was very white. And it was, you could do your own deep dive on this. I am not going to pretend to be the expert. But that's when, I think it was Frank DeLeo and primarily Frank and Michael that went to battle with MTV. And and Sony. I don't remember, and I haven't done any recent research on this, but it was a big deal to get Michael played on MTV, and Beat It was one of those monster songs that just kicked the door open. There was no way that they could hold that out. So Beat It has all kinds of studio lore to it. Everyone's heard, or not everyone, but you may or may not have heard about speakers catching on fire. And I've heard that story and read that story so many times, and it seems to get bigger and bigger with each telling. So I'm going to tell you my version of the story. And I wasn't there, but I've heard it directly from Bruce and Quincy talking about it. And they could stretch a story a little bit. Matt and I have talked about it. The gist of it was Eddie Van Halen came in with his engineer, Don Landy, and they worked in Westlake Studio B with Matt Forager. Matt was, of course, one of the assistant engineers on the Thriller album. Bruce and Quincy and Michael were still in Studio A, and they really didn't come over at all. To the best of my knowledge, that's what Matt has told me. And Matt, I think the whole session with Eddie only lasted 30 minutes or so. And the story goes that Eddie played the solo 2 or 3 times. Matt did an edit, a great edit, pieced the front half of one solo and the back half of a second solo together, and it was done. And Eddie packed up and went home. And so fast forward a couple weeks, and now it's time to mix the song Beat It back in Studio A with Bruce, Quincy, Michael, the big boys. And as Bruce was mixing it, now this part is true. Michael had the monitors so loud, one of the woofers in the Westlake HR1s built into the wall actually did catch fire. Now, it overheated. The magnet overheated, and Bruce talks about, the techs all had to come running in with fire extinguishers. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, I'm not sure, but basically they just had to replace the speaker. But it makes for a great story that Eddie Van Halen's guitar solo almost caught Westlake Studios on fire. They almost had to send, water dropping planes, to put the fire out. But that's what studio lore is all about. Let the story get a little bit bigger over time. After Beat It, you've got Thriller, the big dog, the big high budget music video. Through life, people find out that I worked with Michael Jackson, and they're, I'm a huge Michael Jackson fan. And I don't pretend to be a huge Michael Jackson fan. I mean, I worked with him. I love a lot of the music, but I've met people who they listen to Michael like 24 hours a day, and that's cool. If that's your vibe, knock yourself out. But kind of, what you might call those kind of lightweight fans, I'll say, what's your favorite Michael Jackson songs? And well, I love Thriller, and what's that other one, Billie Jean? And again, please don't think I'm being mean or snide, but Michael has such a crazy good discography that goes beyond the big dogs like that. But and Thriller has been, oversaturated at Halloween and, Thriller parties, and that's cool. That's great. But sometimes, and I've done this at my live events sometimes during, when we're really, really listening to music, I'll tell people, do the best you can to just take the video out of your brain and just listen to that song. It's a masterfully written song by Rod Temperton. Michael's performance, the studio musicians, everything about it, my goodness, it is, the early 80s studio musicians firing on all cylinders, and it's a masterful recording. So I'm obviously it had to be, part of the film and part of the soundtrack. So yay, Thriller's there. All right, let's keep going. Billie Jean. This was another one that just knocked the doors off MTV, and just a masterful song. In fact, I might even go so far as to say that Billie Jean may have been I got to be careful how I say this. Which songs on the Thriller album really grabbed me? I loved Billie Jean. I absolutely loved it. It's not the most complex song in terms of musical complexity. And of course, the story goes that, he kind of borrowed or lifted the bass line from Hall & Oates, but who cares? If they don't care, why should I? So absolute banger of a song. I can't wait to see what they do in the film. If you've seen Michael live or if you've seen some of his concert footage, Billie Jean was just a showstopper. And when Jonathan Moffat, Sugarfoot, would take the lead, and it would just be Michael and the kick and snare, and just let Michael be Michael and rip into his solo dance, and then build up to the moonwalk. People would just lose their minds, and it was just amazing to see up close and personal. And if you've ever been to one of Michael's shows, you know what I'm talking about. Next one, Want to Be Starting Something. Another just brilliant song, and I'm so happy that it's part of this soundtrack. The rhythm guitar in that just knocks my socks off. I've always loved. I believe that's David Williams that plays that guitar, and I've seen David play it live many times, and same thing, just amazing song. When you go back and listen to some of those songs off the Wall and Thriller, I'll tell people, I just taught at Abbey Road, Paris a few days ago, a really wonderful group of students. And I'll tell them that some of these songs, you've got to just focus on it. Let the song kind of absorb into you a little bit, because it's a masterclass in production, and just how Bruce recorded and mixed all those elements, keeps them separate and clear. Maybe we'll talk about some of Bruce's techniques, another day, but, and then Quincy having just this, remarkable, restraint, cause you've got Steve Porcaro talks about working with Quincy Jones, and these musicians would come in because Quincy might have 3, 4, 5 guys come in and, do a keyboard part, synth part. And I'm very loosely quoting Steve Porcaro from Toto, but he would say, when you're in there playing, it's a party, Quincy's dancing and everybody's just having a blast. And then as soon as you leave, they're like, all right, let's get the next guy and see what he can do. And it's, to a certain extent, it's true, but that's how they got the best performances out of these guys. It was very competitive, very fun. And they would just go through a lot of different players and see who could bring the most to the table. So, Starting Something, I think, is one of those. It's just a gorgeous piece of music. Then you jump to Human Nature. I mean, this soundtrack, it's just one after another. Now, I didn't mean to gloss over the early songs, but I wasn't as close and personal to those. But now we're hitting my era, my stride. And Human Nature, written by Steve Porcaro, is probably my favorite song on Thriller. Well, I always tell people I kind of have two. It's Human Nature and Lady in My Life. And they are the recording, because I the way my brain works when I listen to these songs, I do hear the song, but I hear the elements. I hear the kick and the snare and the gentle horns, and obviously Michael's vocal and the background vocals. And I just kind of, laser focus in on those sounds. And Human Nature is just so beautifully recorded by Bruce, and Michael's performance is fantastic. I've got the multi-track for Human Nature, and I think Michael did the lead vocal, I think about 7 times, something like that. And they're all amazing. They're different, but he would try little things. And he's still kind of young as a solo artist. And it was fun to watch him, explore and just listen to what his voice could do, because I think he was still getting used to it. Well, maybe that's an overstatement, but I think he was having fun being able to use his voice as just a remarkable instrument. Working Day and Night. the first thing that comes to my mind, the very first thing, is when we finished the Bad album. Right now I'm part of the team, and yes, I understand Working Day and Night was from a previous record, so don't get ahead of me. When we finished the Bad album, we were just about done mixing, and they moved me to a different studio, to Enterprise Studios in LA. And I was given the task of building the live mixes. And even when I think about it, the whole thing is a little bit daunting because I was pretty new to the team. I was very young. And but Michael and Bruce trusted me, and they put me over, and they were very closed with who had access to this music. So they put me at Enterprise Studios, and then I would work with Michael, Greg Fillinganes, who was the musical director, the MD, and then I believe I was over there with Lavelle. I think Lavelle was the lead choreographer. Forgive me if I got that wrong. And what we were doing is we were restructuring the songs, the tracks that we had just recorded from the Bad album, and restructuring them for the tour. What does that mean? That means that we lowered the pitch. We dropped a lot of them down into a lower key so Michael could sing it live. Then we edited them. So we had, Michael might want to do a 16-bar dance break or an 8-bar dance break, or do, the 8 bars of instruments or whatever. So we tried to get all that charted out for the backing tracks as much as we could. And then we sped them up. We really hit the gas pedal on the tempo of those songs. And Working Day and Night, if you've ever seen that live, remember Michael did the Siegfried and Roy thing? He had that little slide or whatever it was. I probably shouldn't. I'm not supposed to give it away. But he went up the stairs and then he disappeared, and the curtain came down. He disappeared. Then he pops up on the cherry picker. I don't know how many times I've seen that, but that was at the end of Working Day and Night. And the tempo on stage, in the arenas was just crazy fast. And Michael's just, because we're trying to keep the audience hyped up and excited. So tempo is a good way to do that. So Working Day and Night was one of those that just went crazy fast. And then the last song on the soundtrack that I see is Bad. It's so obvious. It sounds like that's about as far as they're going to take the movie. Into the song Bad. I hope they really explore more of those songs in the second film. I really hope so, because man, they've got the Bad album, the Dangerous album, the History album. I hope they call. I'd love to have a chat. I did have a very small involvement in the Michael movie. And it just has to do with, the microphones they used, kind of some techie stuff. I didn't, offer any choreography advice or anything like that. But, they do have my number, so that's nice. They're welcome to call, and I'm happy to chat. So I think it's going to be a pretty banging soundtrack. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Obviously focusing on the younger years before I met Michael, and then it's kind of unfortunate. I hope they touch on Captain EO. I don't know if they will or not, but a lot of you that Captain EO is one of my favorite topics. I could talk about Captain EO, till I'm blue in the face. But so I hope they give EO just a little something. We'll see. But Michael's life was so amazing that obviously they can't include a fraction. So they're going to hit the highlights. And I think Jafar, I'm hoping and believe that he's going to do a remarkably good job. So I'd like to hear your comments. If you think that's a good track listing for the first soundtrack. It sounds like, I'm sure everyone has their favorite that did not make it. But again, they can't. I don't think they're planning on doing a 77-hour movie. So they just have to kind of pick and choose what they do. I am kind of by coincidence, kind of not by coincidence. I am wearing the MJ the Musical shirt. I can't remember which city I bought this in, but same thing. They packed a lot of music into the musical, a lot of songs, and some of them, in some instances, they're only doing, maybe 16 bars, 24 bars of a song. And it's nice. It gives that particular song at least a little positive bump that, it's included in the show. At the same time, a lot of these songs you really want to kind of sink into and enjoy the whole thing. So we'll see how the movie handles that, because his discography was so amazing. So a couple more things I want to talk about really quickly. Number one, Paris. We were in Paris just a couple days ago at Abbey Road Institute, Abbey Road Studios. And if you can believe it, it has been 15 years since there was a group of French guys. I've talked about them so often. They're such sweet guys. 15 years ago, they brought Deb and I and our girls to Paris to just share some stories. And that was the first event I ever did kind of under the name In the Studio with MJ. And then a year later, in 2012, I believe it was, I'm looking at the poster right there, which was 14 years ago. That was our first real event. The first one was private. The second one was an actual ticketed event. And that was also in Paris. And then we did a couple in New York. And since then, we're breathing pretty hard on 300 events that we've done over the past 14, 15 years. So going back to Paris is always, it's always sweet. It's a bit of a homecoming. And here's what really blew my mind. I even said this to the group. We had good groups on Saturday and Sunday, and both groups were like 90% new guests. Because I have a lot of events where, people will come 2, 3, 4 times, which is really humbling. That really means a lot to me. But this one was like 90% new people. And I think we had countries represented all over Western Europe. I think we had 6 or 7 countries represented. And what a great group. In fact, I'll tell you something kind of funny. Over the years, I don't want to say that my show is on autopilot, but this year we really put in a lot of new stuff. And I was kind of joking with them a little bit, because I was like, here you guys are, you've heard good things about my events, and now I'm changing the whole event. But thankfully they seemed to like it, and the new material went over really, really well. And it was a great trip. Made several new friends, and it's just always fun to be back in Paris, have some really tasty food, maybe a glass or 3 of wine, and it was a good time. Now, in just over a week, we're going to be in New York. We're going to be back at the Hit Factory. The last time I walked through that front door of the Hit Factory would have been 1995. That's absolutely true. We finished up the history album and packed up the truck and we went to LA and then we went back to New York a couple times, but it doesn't matter. But it was 1995 was really the last time that I've been back at the Hit Factory. And of course, now it's called Fount Studios, but it's still called the Hit Factory building. And I'm going to be there with my buddy Tony Black. And we're going to plow into the history album, swap some stories, swap some laughs. And we're doing similar to what we did in LA. We're doing kind of a hybrid event, meaning the first 3 hours we're going to live stream. And you're welcome to buy a ticket and join us virtually on the live stream. If you can't fly into New York from Australia or Japan or Germany or wherever you are, you can buy a ticket and join us via live stream, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. Believe it or not, I've done this now for a little while, but talking to a camera and responding to, online comments and questions is almost harder than talking to a live group. So I love hybrid events where I've got a live group and I've got a camera, and Tony and I are going to have a great time. And then, as a bonus to our in-person guests, the live stream will last about 3 hours, and that's kind of enough. And then we're going to cut the camera, and then we'll go a little bit deeper, for our in-person guests. And I know if you're in Australia, I don't expect you to come to New York just for an extra couple hours, but I do have to give my in-person guests a little more attention. So that'll be the second half of the event, a week from Saturday. Man, it's coming right up. We finally got tickets on sale for Bucharest, Romania. The first time I've been to Bucharest. We're going to be there mid-April. We just put tickets up today, and there's so many surprises that we're working on for Bucharest. Obviously, Michael did his Dangerous tour from Bucharest. I'm not going to say a whole lot about it just yet because I'm kind of focused on New York, but there's going to be some cool stuff happening in Bucharest. And then after that, we're still kind of lining up studios. I think in August, we're going to be back out. We're going to be at Record One in LA. So if you're planning on doing some MJ stuff in LA this summer, I know they're doing the movie night at Havenhurst. I believe it's on the 28th and 30th or something of August. And I'm going to do 2 days at Record One right in that same weekend. And I think that's, if you want to step foot in the Record One, where we made the Dangerous album, I always have great special guests. That's going to be happening end of August. So the last thing I'm going to do is, remember, a bunch of you actually responded to our survey. We had, a few weeks ago, I did a survey about what do you want the podcast to be about, live events, different things. And man, we got some really, really good stuff. And I've been going through them and kind of, carving out some ideas for the next few weeks. But number one, thank you. I love feedback. And anytime that you guys drop me a note or a comment or something, I do the best I can to read every single one and absorb, see if the request makes sense and try to do it at some point. So just to give you a couple ideas here, people like me love Captain EO. They would love to do a deep dive on that. They want sweet or funny Michael stories. Well, yeah, don't we all? But yeah, I mean, I love talking about the guy. I absolutely adored him, loved working with him. And I have to remember, and I hope this doesn't sound the least bit narcissistic, but I was around him so much that I don't want to gloss over just kind of the fun little normal memories and just focus on the big crazy things that happened. He was an absolute pleasure to be around. This person would love to have an opportunity to hear more collaborative events if possible. Brad Buxer, Michael Prince. Oh, should I say this? We're working really hard on a Brad Buxer event in Germany this summer. So I just said it. There you go. I blurted it out. If you are planning on doing some Michael traveling in over the summer, if you happen to be in Europe, I would suggest you look at Berlin. I'm pretty sure we're going to land in Berlin in late June. That's the plan. And then if you want to come to the U.S., then we'll be in L.A. in August. So I'm kind of flipping the script a little bit. Normally I do LA in June, and then I'll do something in Europe in August, but I'm reversing it because the World Cup is in LA in June. You bring in something like the World Cup, and it definitely, it's going to be challenging. So we're going to push our stuff back into August in LA. But I think we're going to do something in June in Germany with Brad Buxer. So there you go. Cat's out of the bag. Maybe a Halloween event similar to Christmas at Neverland. Well, that's kind of interesting. We could think about that, doing some sort of like a live stream or something, with a little bit of a fun Halloween. Several years ago, we actually did the Halloween, the 5K, which was really fun. And so I don't know. We'll kick that idea around a little bit. Live streams are not compatible in my time zone, Melbourne, Australia. We do the best we can. With the Christmas tour of Neverland, I do one like at 7 a.m. East Coast time, East Coast US, mainly for my, maybe not 7 a.m, whatever time we do it. Maybe it's noon. But yeah, I mean, if the interest is there, I'll get up at 4 a.m. and do a live stream. I don't care. I just got to kind of make the minutes count. So I think I'm going to let it go at that. There's some great requests here. Oh, can you dig out anything about the reptile house? It seems like the most secretive place. If you know me, if you've heard me talk about Michael's reptile house at Neverland, if there's one piece of ground at all of Neverland that I spent the most time in, working on, just focused on systems, it was the reptile house. And I don't have any photos of it. I do have some pretty cool recordings. So, because I did all the recording myself, I would love it if somebody would send me a video or some photos of the inside of the reptile house to the bed. I've just never seen one. And we've looked and looked and looked. So that's kind of a fun idea. So I'm going to let it go at that. Get excited about the Michael movie coming out. I keep remembering things. The night where I'm actually going to a preview of the Michael movie. I think it's a day or two before its official release. And my buddy Jared Bradshaw, Jared and I go way, way back. The Broadway Bradshaws, I've known Jared and Lindsay for years. Jared and I are going to go see the movie a night or two before its official release. And we're going to do either a podcast or maybe even a live stream. I haven't decided yet. And just have a discussion. Just talk about what we think of it, what highlights, anything that we think was missed. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So that's coming up after our screening of the Michael movie. So have a great night. I've been quietly sipping my ginger tea here. I hope you're taking good care of yourself. And can't wait to hang out with you in the studio again. God bless. Have a great week. Stay safe. In the Studio, the podcast is produced by Maddie Sundberg. Theme music performed by Buddy Nuanez. Artwork by Andy Healy. Studio electronics provided by Golden Age Project. And studio acoustics provided by Acoustic Sciences Corporation. My name is Brad Sundberg. Thanks so much for hanging out with us in the studio.